Welcome to The Leaders Who Care, a podcast powered by Dynamis Group. We are here to give the stage and support to those committed to create a positive and lasting impact, way beyond the profits and margins, the leaders of the world who care for others and serve a bigger purpose. Join us on the journey of creating a better, more caring world. And now to your host, Marian Temelkov.
Hello, everyone. Today, I'm super excited to welcome a special guest, Natalie Nixon, a creativity strategist and an author and president of Figure 8 Thinking. Natalie, thank you for making the time and joining us today. I would love to hear your story, but first of all, I'm grateful for being back in the UK. And for those of you who are listening to the podcast of The Leaders Who Care, we're on a mission to discover and talk to caring leaders from every corner, every country in the world, and create a platform where they can connect together and amplify their impact and inspire many others to care and do it in many different ways and shape or form. So thank you for Natalie joining us today. And where are you joining us from first? And just share a brief kind of story from where you a little bit about your kind of background and where you're coming from.
Hi, Marian. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here. I am in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, which a lot of people do not know, but Philadelphia was actually the United States' first capital centuries ago, even before Washington, D.C. So we have a lot of history here. It's actually my hometown, so it's actually where I was born and raised. And I lived a lot of different places. And then I've been back now for like 20 years. So it's been a long time, but I've been back and it's been awesome. So here in Philly, it is the end of summertime, which always makes me a little sad because I love the summer. It's one of my favorite seasons. I just love being outdoors more. I love the longer days. But, you know, my birthday's in the fall. So fall is transition. It gives us an opportunity to slow down a bit. And, you know, we just celebrated the Jewish holiday of Rosh Hashanah yesterday, which is all about renewal. So there's lots of renewal to look forward to as well.
I love that. And Philadelphia, hello, I love the city. I know there's so much. What a great city of serving not only United States, but the world. So I'm really grateful that I have been to the city. And,
good.
And really, I'm absolutely... love that journey from New York all the way down to, in fact, Ocean City, and all the way down to it's really kind of a great trip.
You really have been here, and I hope you enjoyed the food and the art scene and the music scene. It's a great city.
I'm yet to explore it even more. So what a great privilege to have you today on The Leaders Who Care. Natalie, since many of our listeners may not know of you, who is Natalie Nixon? And just starting with your journey in kind of a 5-minute summary about how did you all start it and to reach where you are today?
Well, that's a loaded question. There's a lot of ways I can answer that question, but I will, to kind of keep it within a lane. You know, I have a really loopy background. I consider myself incredibly hybrid. I consider myself a hybrid thinker, and that's not always something that I easily embraced. Growing up, I felt the pressures to, you know, pick a lane, choose a specialization. And that never quite felt comfortable for me. I've always thrived in interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary spaces. I have a background in cultural anthropology and fashion. And I have worked in corporate America. I worked in the nonprofit space. I've lived in 5 different countries. I always figured out ways to either study abroad or get paid to live abroad as an expat. And so I've lived in Brazil, Israel, Germany, Sri Lanka, and Portugal. I'm a Lusophile. I love Brazilian culture. I love any excuse to speak Portuguese so I can keep it up. I was a professor for 16 years, and in the middle of no, maybe about 5 years into being a professor, where I was teaching the business of fashion, because I worked in global sourcing for a division of the limited brands, and then I switched to academia. My mentors were encouraging me to earn a PhD, and I ended up earning my PhD in the United Kingdom, in London, actually. So
Wow.
in the land where you are right now. And my doctorate is in this field called design management. And while that was an incredibly audacious and challenging chapter to work full time while earning a PhD, and I did it in 4 years, it was also an incredibly exhilarating time, because it was the first time in my life that I kind of found an intellectual home. And what I mean by that, I reference that I'm very hybrid. I have a loopy background, very exploratory. Design management is this field that really thrives at the intersection of design and business, creativity and strategy. And the way I describe it, I finally found a hook to hang my hat. And so it was incredibly energizing time. And after I completed my PhD, I convinced my university that we should be doing work in this space. And they said, okay, you do it. So with the help of some colleagues, I created and launched the Strategic Design MBA program. And it was this executive MBA that integrated design thinking and how people were learning strategy and leadership and finance and branding. And about a year into that, I ended up doing a TEDx Philadelphia talk. And it was really an opportunity for me to say in plain English what my dissertation was about. And in it, I basically proclaimed that the future of work is jazz, that the more improvisational our organizations are, the more experimental approaches we have to work, the better off we will be, the more innovative we will be. And that talk catapulted me into getting invited into companies to share a similar message, to consult, to advise. And this was all a side hustle. I was still a professor full time. And about a year into all of these invitations, my husband said to me, babe, you should formalize this, create a formal LLC. So I did that. And then I realized I'm actually having more fun with my side hustle. And so that required me to pause and to take stock and to see, do I want to continue in this career that I worked so hard to build in academia? And my answer to myself was, I want to try something different. And so I did. And in 2017, I left academia, and I have been 4 years now, I'm in my 5th year, fully building out my company, Figure 8 Thinking, and it's been incredible. I advise leaders on transformation and help them to apply wonder and rigor to amplify their business value. I'm a global keynote speaker. I'm an author of The Creativity Leap. Before that book, I edited a book called Strategic Design Thinking, and I'm an advisor. And I'm also a student of dance. I've always been a student of dance. I love to dance. And right now, my fun, happy place is a social ballroom and hip hop classes.
Wow, what a great story. I just listening to you, I kind of enjoyed the differences you've done, so many experiences. And I think what a great message that we have for the future leaders, for the young ones, especially that are starting out now, is very consistent to many great leaders that I hear them try out many things.
Yes.
I think what you're suggesting here is that the future is not just about knowledge, because the past was about knowledge and manufacturing or some of those things really that were happening. But the future is about experience, someone who has wisdom and experience. Really, that if you have those experiences, you build wisdom. And the more failures you may have, do not worry about. Don't judge yourself. Every failure you have will be a great source of income for you.
Yes.
In the future. When you and you mentioned something very important, the future is also of those who are creative. So experience comes with a lot of trying out many things. I love what you said about multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary knowledge. This is very important.
Yes.
Use that until you culminate to find that one thing that you can become one of the best in the field or one of the best in the world. So I think it's a process, from what I hear, my own experience, that if you just do many different things and you get bored every time, I guess you're probably not gonna live or become really great in something. But the counter argument is, if you don't try many things, you don't know what you want.
That's right.
So I think, and it's interesting, whenever you find that, you know it's right. You say, hey,
yes,
it's, and this is what I believe. I mean, my secret is, I guess, if you want to know it, for me, it's, I'm very curious. I try many things like you do, but many of those things will fail or not work out. And I will always try to do is be sensitive. And I always say, if it's God will, as someone with Christian values, I really put God first, because that's the first key. If I actually, because I can do many things and think I want many things, but if I don't pay attention to those things and that relationship that I have with you, probably things will 100% will fail.
Yes.
So this is really trying out many things, but also, invest time. I invest time in really understanding what is, because I believe everyone is unique and has a divine mission on this planet. But the problem is that people don't spend time to get to that relationship and get to know who God is, what He wanted from us. And that's what is, when you actually know that and when you follow that insight and spirit, then magical things happen in that. So I'm really grateful that you shared your story, because your story, it's a great lesson and for young people, and really the ones that are thinking, hey, what should I do? There's a lot of pressure on young people, and that's what I'm really concerned nowadays. So please do not stress out a lot.
No.
Just enjoy that journey. It's about a journey. It's not about the end result as well, because the end result matters. But if you stress out and you achieve it and there's no one around you, you probably fall into a very deep depression in saying, I achieved that. Is that all? 15, 20 seconds or a few minutes, a few days of joy. But actually making that journey enjoyable, and surround yourself with people who care and make a difference is a significant part of that. What are these lessons you want to give to young people who are starting out, Natalie, especially now, because there's so much knowledge, so much data, and you can find pretty much anything, which is probably one of the best times we ever live. But at the same time, that's confusing for young people. Yes. What is your advice for the future generation?
Well, first of all, I wholeheartedly agree with you about the value of being open to trying new things. It's this interesting spectrum of being outwardly open to experiencing what life presents to you, and also going inward and being really attuned to, is this true for me? Is this something that resonates with me? Is this something that I value? And one of the beautiful things that we're even seeing with our daughter, who's 20 years old, who, like a lot of Gen Z people, feels the pressures of and I remember when I was 19, 20, in college, I thought, oh my gosh, whatever I major in, that's going to dictate my life, because we don't have context. We don't have perspective when we're that young. And she's really following our advice to study what you love, to try new things, to show up. Because one of the things that happens, the more we show up for things, the more we try new things, it actually reveals what we don't want to do, right? It actually helps us to narrow things down, and that we're witnessing that with Sydney, that she's starting to figure out, oh, okay, I thought I liked X, but now that I've had this internship or done a couple of courses in this, I realize I'm not so interested in that, but this this little thread of that over here is super interesting to me. But the best advice I can give to young people, especially in a world where they are surrounded with seemingly instant success. You know, we all on social media, we can curate our identity. We can curate a way of being where no one sees us when we're down. No one sees us when we're doubtful, when we feel discouraged. We always show our best selves. And if you've grown up like Gen Z people have, and millennials as well, but especially Gen Z, with constant curated lives through Instagram and Snapchat and those and now TikTok, it can feel like a lot of pressure. So there's a wonderful quote, I believe it was Teddy Roosevelt, who said that comparison is the thief of joy. And I have to remind myself of that, right? Because, you know, we are all on these digital platforms now, right? There's a lot of people who I look up to. I think, wow, they have so many fans. They have so many followers. They're speaking on these stages. One day, I hope I will be able to do X, Y, Z. But then I have to dial myself back and focus on, I had a boss, Jim Schwartz, when I worked in the fashion industry. I learned so much from him. And he used to have an expression, keep your eye on the donut, not the hole. So that's another. So I guess I have several pieces of advice. Number one, remember this expression that comparison is the thief of joy. So stop comparing yourself. You are unique. You are one and only. Secondly, the expression that Jim Schwartz would say to me, keep your eye on the donut, not the hole, which is like an incredibly Zen statement, because it's not about what woulda, shoulda, coulda been. Like, let's focus on what we have to work with, right? And then the third piece of advice, which my parents gave me when I was in college, I gave this advice to Sydney when she was graduating from high school. Study what you love, follow your heart. And now I understand, since I'm much older, that when we follow our hearts, it's actually a much more efficient way to live. And what I mean by that is, I have friends and associates and acquaintances who get to a mid-age life, and there's a reason why we call it midlife crisis, where they have like the golden handcuffs of corporate America. They are making tons of money, but like they feel like they have no purpose. What's the meaning of all this? And sometimes we don't follow our heart because we think, oh, how am I going to make a living? Well, here's the great news. You can always make money. You can always figure out how to make money. And actually, it's not even about making the money. It's about learning how to invest. It's learning how to ensure that you, what's the expression? It's about your net worth, right? So it's less about that top line number, but at the end of the day, how much are you investing back in yourself? So following your heart is an incredibly efficient way to live. It actually also means that you will wake up earlier, you will stay later, you will show up more energized. No one has to tell you these things because you love what you do. Now, that's not to say that net, there won't be some of the work that's tedious, that's a drag, that, you know, you have to cross your T's, dot your I's, but on the aggregate, it energizes you. So that's the advice I cannot emphasize enough, not just to young people, to everyone who feels like they're struggling and doubting that inkling to try something that their intuition, that their heart is telling them to do. Start by asking questions. Start by, I just launched a new online creativity course called the Wonder Rigor Lab. And one of the initial lessons, actually, it's in the second milestone, is about going on a listening tour and asking for help. Actually, that's the third milestone. Asking for help and listening and getting advice. And sometimes we're afraid to ask for help. Sometimes we're afraid to admit what we don't know. We're afraid to admit uncertainty. But the great news is that people are inherently vain. So people would love to give you advice and talk to you and give you their 2 cents about ideas about what you might do next. But that would be my advice, those 3 things.
Natalie, this is such a valuable, and what a kind of a great, I've never heard them in that combination before. And the comparison is a thief of joy. So just, I guess, compare with yourself, I guess. Maybe that's how you can change that perspective. And I love what you said about often is the attitude, and people focus on what they don't have versus what they have. And if you focus on the whole, not on the donut, I guess that's what happens,
Right.
It's, instead of being grateful for what you have,
right.
in that aspect. Follow your heart. I love what you just said. It's not about making the money. It's about learning to invest. That's how you create wealth and abundance. And
Totally.
and really a lot of people, what I'm very interested in, I wanted to see, what's your opinion on this? Do we have to compromise on any area of our lives? Can we not have it all? Can we not have the financial abundance, the great relationships that we want, the health that we want? What do you think? Is that possible?
So before I answer, I just remembered the phrase I was trying to think of when it comes to building personal wealth. It's not how much money you make, it's how much money you keep. And that was that expression that when in my 20s, as a single woman, I started to read as much as I could about personal finance and to learn about it. And that was I always remember, I don't remember what book I was reading, but you could be a person who's a multimillionaire and your net worth may not be as much as someone who's making, I don't know, 5 figures or 6 figures, because it's not how much money you make, it's how much money you keep. But in terms of compromise, this is where the patience piece comes, because in my experience, the benefits of following your heart, the benefits of trying not to compare yourself, of just being yourself, it doesn't come all at once. And this is actually where the rigor part is. If you read my book, The Creativity Leap, then you know that I think about creativity as toggling between wonder and rigor to solve problems. And sometimes when people think about creativity, they think it's this like woo-woo, frilly add-on. There's the important stuff, and then there's creativity. And we stop at the dimension of wonder, which actually we don't spend enough time on. Wonder is about awe and audacity, and yes, you like to do deep curiosity and blue sky questions. It's also about pausing, but creativity also requires rigor, and rigor is about the fundamentals. It's about discipline. It's about time on task. It's often very solitary. It's not very sexy. And anyone who has studied any of the arts, for me, it was dance. For other people, it's painting or music, photography, writing. You are well aware of the rigor, right? Before, as a dancer, you can start doing the leaps and the turns and the cool choreography. There is the grind of the fundamentals, and it's not fun. It's sweaty. It's gritty. It hurts. You're sore, and you have to keep showing up over and over and over again. And creativity needs both of those things. So when you talk about compromise, maybe the word isn't compromise, but it's understanding the long game. The long view requires that you do master the fundamentals, that you do your reps. I call them creativity reps, right? That you spend the time to really be focused. And I have I call it a corollary statement about wonder and rigor, which is as follows. Wonder is found in the midst of rigor, and rigor cannot be sustained without wonder. And I made up that corollary so people can understand how intertwined wonder and rigor are, how copacetic they are. And when I say that wonder is found in the midst of rigor, I mean that in the middle of a rigorous task, It may be stretching your body. It may be pulling out weeds in a garden. It may be filing your taxes. It may be completing for me, this is Rigor, a laborious spreadsheet on Excel. It's often in those moments that, like an aha, wondrous moment happens for you. And that's what I mean when I say wonder is found in the midst of rigor. The corollary to that is that rigor cannot be sustained without wonder. And what I mean is that, especially in a lot of our work environments, it's work, work, work to the bone. It's Zoom meeting, Zoom meeting, Zoom meeting. It's churn. And actually, sometimes that's not really rigor, that's rigidity, right? Rigor is not the same as being rigid. And at the same time, we work in organizations where we're expected to innovate. We're expected to come up with something new and surprising and audacious. And you can't do that if it's just rigor, 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 right? It's not sustainable without the wonder. You must design space and you must design time for the wonder so that you can be re-energized, recharged, and go back to the rigor.
I love the way you present it, because often they say you got to find something you love and then everything will be all right. But actually, it's without that rigor, what you're saying, and doing those boring tasks every single day that you needed to do, you cannot just go on wonder only, because it's wonder, but then you gotta really do the actual work and make things happen. And all work is not always like the most inspiring thing you have to do. Sometimes you got to do tasks that are really you may not like. What are your thoughts, Natalie, if some people say, well, maybe you find someone else who can do this for you? But is that really, because sometimes you cannot always find someone to do the things you don't like to do?
That's true. And in my experience, so in the early stages, when you're figuring out what is it that I want to do, what is, as more people are calling it, my zone of genius. It's the part where I like to say, where you just hum. It's easy and you are energized by it. And to get to that point, there are tasks, there is prep. Think of a chef. Before a chef, maybe at the early stages of a chef becoming a Supreme Award-winning, James Beard Award-winning chef, they need to be the prep cook. They need to dice the onions, the peppers, and they need to review and research recipes. They need to experiment. They need to be the sous chef. They need to figure out the dining situation. They may be a one-person show. And then eventually they can build in the scaffolding and the support, where they have the prep chef, where they have the sous chef, where they have someone who's managing the floor, and they can be in their zone of the creation of the meal, which often, as we experience, feels like a work of art, right? So for me, I can speak from my own experience. Before we started our show, our conversation this morning, I was sharing with Stoyan how I am finally at a stage in my company where I'm creating systems, where I'm creating processes. I'm having to delegate. I'm forcing myself to delegate. And I'm in the position where I'm able to hire people who can fill in the blanks and complement the work that I consider, I know it's essential, I know it's necessary, and I never look forward to doing it. And because I don't look forward to doing it, I procrastinate on doing it. And because I procrastinate on doing it, I have less time to do the work that I love, that I thrive on. So I love the content creation. I can do that for days. I love generative work. I'm a big picture person. And I can grow better and I can be more inspired when I can fill in the blanks with people around me who have a different type of beautiful brain, right? Who are able to assist me in the areas that I now know I I need help with this. But that didn't come right away for me, in part because I was not wise enough to know not only can I not do it all, I shouldn't do it all, right? And I got hip to the fact that if I really want to grow and scale, I've got to figure out how to unpack everything that is in my noggin, lay it out on a table and say, okay, this, and this, who can I hire me to talk to, can help me with this area where they are amazing at this and they can do it 10 times faster than me. And that means now these 3 areas I can fully focus on. So I think it is important, especially as we get wiser and more established about our work, to understand what makes the most sense for me to spend time on. And actually, it's a very generous way of working, in my opinion, because I have joy that in small ways, I'm contributing to a microeconomy, right? I'm not hogging up I have to do everything, and I don't do everything well. No one does, right? But I let things go. I ask for help, and I can hire people who are much better at that, who help me to be better.
And Natalie, you mentioned something earlier that I was really, thank you for sharing those points. And I think what you're suggesting, you got to go through the experience yourself before you are in a position to hire, so you know what you're looking for. And that's, I mean, if you're not done the task, I guess you'll not be as efficient of actually defining what the task is. You know, you got to articulate what somebody needs to do. And that's so valuable. I think it's so important. And you mentioned something that creativity and rigor, it's so important. They go together so closely. Really, I think it's in order for us to be sustainable, to have that continuous creativity and well-being, and that we need to find a way to take care of ourselves. You mentioned making time for ourselves. How do you take care of yourself, Natalie? How do you kind of keep that passion, alive, and that creativity in you in order to give you that continuous way and energy and sustainable way to do the things you want to achieve and not give up?
For me, it's very much inside-outside work. And what I mean by that is I have a faith and a spiritual practice. So daily in the mornings, I pray, I meditate, I write in a gratitude journal. So I go internally. And one of the things that helps for me to do, it gives me perspective that it helps me, it reminds me I'm part of a much larger system, right? And that in a weird way is very reassuring, because it kind of like puts less pressure on me. So going internally on a daily basis is one of the ways that I renew, that I remain energized. So my spiritual practice is very important for me. And at the same time, when I said it's inside out work, the outward expression for how I remain energized is through dance, is through movement. Mm-hmm. I'm a very kinesthetic person. While I live in the city of Philadelphia, we are an incredible city that has a lot of public green space. So whether you live in the hood or in a really elite Tony community, you have access to the woods, to creeks, to trails. So in the community where we live, there's actually a woods across the street. We live in the middle of something called Fairmount Park. Philadelphia has 10x the amount of green space as Central Park. As people know Central Park, that gives you some perspective. But it's not just one concentrated area, it's disseminated throughout the city. So that ability to access nature, I call it dip into the woods 2 to 3 days a week.
Wow.
And just do a short, sometimes it's a 10-minute walk. I also have a walk that I do pretty regularly, which is a 30-minute walk. And the Japanese have an expression, I don't know the words in Japanese, but in English it's forest bathing. It's this idea that immersing ourselves in nature recalibrates us. And now we know scientifically that's true. And it doesn't have to be the forest, it could be the ocean. What happens when we immerse ourselves in the woods, for example, when you're walking on soil and dirt, there's different bacteria that are released. And when we inhale those smells, that helps to release the happy hormones like serotonin and and then our endorphins versus the stress hormones like cortisol, right? Which over time are really harmful to our heart, really harmful to our liver. So movement, immersing myself in nature, dance brings me incredible joy. And so that's for me how I remain energized and positive and enthusiastic. And, I increasingly am embracing how important it is to have these practices that help us to recalibrate emotionally. In my work, I remind clients that organizations are organisms, that markets are made up of humans, and therefore they're imperfect, they're inconsistent, they're not predictive, and we have to embrace the humanness of. That's the opportunity, I think, in the future of work is to really design work environments that allow for the human to show up, so that we, as I like to say, we don't show up to work in drag, right? It's not like Marian's best hits, greatest hits, the best of, but we understand all the dimensions of you that could actually add value to a project. I love the work of Erica Keswin, who wrote a great book called Bring Your Human to Work. And her next book was all about rituals in the workplace. And these sorts of ideas, I cannot emphasize enough, are so important for leaders to embrace. The leaders who realize that their teams want to show up more humanly and not be viewed as a cog in the wheel will actually be more productive.
I love that, Natalie, and what you're suggesting, I couldn't agree more, because for me, that kind of servant leadership, really, where you create human-centric companies, because ultimately your team, the people are because my belief is that the role of the CEO is to take care of the people,
Yes.
and they will take care of everything else.
Yes.
So in a way, you start to care about your own people. They care about your clients and everyone else. Not so much the clients yourself, because ultimately, if you lead a large organization, even if it's a small organization, they can make such a difference if you really understand them. If you really, you talk about productivity, you talk about really that the future of work. What do you think is the future of work? I mean, what is your thoughts on this? Because there's been a lot of ideas, a lot of thoughts on the topic, and it's some interesting suggestions are coming out. But what is your take on it?
I like to think about that question with more questions. I like to think about it in terms of possible scenarios. I'm very aware that in this fourth industrial revolution, where technology is ubiquitous, there's a lot of dystopian views about the future of work, right? That the robots will take over, that there'll be tremendous job loss, and there will only be space for the elites. And we see some evidence of that, right? We see that there's been a lot of job loss already, with automation being introduced in robotics. And then there's also can be a utopian view of the future of work, that it will be much better because we'll have automation and robotics, and there's going to be some jobs lost, but net will be fine. And I really think about it from the perspective of a word that I learned from Galit Ariel. Galit is an augmented reality expert. I interviewed her for my book, The Creativity Leap. And Galit talks about a heterotopia, where yes, there will be casualties as we transition into a world where technology is ubiquitous. Technology is everywhere. I mean, it's already that way, but it's going to be increasingly, the boundaries will be blurred, right? And she makes a point, and I agree with her, the opportunity is to ensure that we have work environments that the technology is used to amplify what is uniquely human. If you think about all of the industrial revolutions leading up to this fourth industrial revolution, pretty much it was about humans fitting into the technology. And there was even that infamous Charlie Chaplin film where he's literally a cog in the wheel. He's stuck in this mechanical cog in a factory, and he's going round and round and round. He can't get off. So the opportunity, if we play our hand well, if we really understand that organizations are organisms, that we have an opportunity to make more room for the human to show up, then we optimize this digital space. So, in a world where we know that we can work from anywhere, that we can learn from anywhere, those organizations that work at the intersection of technology, productivity, and meaningful human experience will be the ones that thrive. I'm biased, but I think the ways that we work through the intersection of tech, productivity, and experience is creativity. We've got to design creativity into the way we hire, into who we hire, into how we retain people, and how we incentivize, how we and invest in folks and really tap into their creativity. That is the way that will work at the intersection of technology, productivity, and meaningful human experience. Currently, what I see is they might be really good at the productivity part, or they might be really good at the technology part. There's some companies that are good at merging productivity and technology. Very few are good at merging tech, productivity, and meaningful human experience. And this digital interface that you and I are on right now, that people every day go on through Teams, through Zoom, through Skype, whatever it is, it has limitations, and people are already struggling with needing to feel connection. At the start of our conversation, we were talking about Gen Z. I posted something in my LinkedIn feed earlier this week. It was a report from US News. It was researched by Adobe, and they learned that something like between 58% to 62% of Gen Z millennials have opted out of the workforce. They're thinking about it, right? They're calling it the Great Resignation. And it's because there's a lack of two things. There's a lack of meaningful human connection. And at the same time, so that's like, to me, the wonder part. At the same time, there's a lack of structure. And think about it. When we first were entering the workforce, we benefited by understanding this is the way you engage with a client. This is how you deal with a client who's unhappy. You were able to sit in on meetings. You're able to shadow. You're able to physically be there. And there was a level of structure there. And that's missing now for a lot of understandable reasons. But that's what young people are craving. They're craving the connection, the purpose, and they're craving how do we do this? What are the rules? Where's the structure? So again, it's interesting to me. It goes back to the wonder and the rigor.
Wonderful. What a great, really insights and advice, Natalie. There's quite a few questions coming up, which I'll turn into them in a minute. But I wanted to ask you, what role care has played in your success?
Oh my gosh. Well, the care I first got was from amazing parents. My parents who sacrificed so much to ensure that I knew I'm loved. That's the first part, because that's the first mirroring we get of who we are and who we can be. The second evidence of that from my parents was just the sacrifice they invested in our education to ensure that we could really optimize our intelligence and our ability to navigate this world. And because that was modeled for me, I engage and indulge in self-care consistently. And for me, that's about being true to myself, taking time for myself, on a spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical level. I'm a big devotee, for example, of massages. Some women spend a lot of time on their hair or their nails. I don't do that, but I do love the self-care that comes from body work. So those are the types of things that I engage in and I indulge in to ensure that, like the word I used earlier, that I recalibrate. And care is something that I think in the future of work, organizations and leaders who can consistently demonstrate authentic caring are going to be the ones that thrive, because they are inviting the humanness of their folks to show up. They will be demonstrating that they see and hear people who are working with them and for them.
And we also believe in that. We also believe that productivity, success of the company, as we say, if we bring the diversity and if we bring the care, the profits will not decrease. On the contrary, they will significantly improve the overall performance, because if you really truly care about your people, they'll care about you. They'll care about your company. They'll care about everything you guys do and the mission that you have. And that's the message we want to spread and inspire as many leaders and CEOs around the world, or even future leaders that are starting out. Take care of the people, of yourself, of course, is very important, but also to the people of the left of you and the right of you, of your family, of everyone, your community, everyone that you get in touch, your clients, and even the person on the street. Just give a smile, and because in a bad times that will serve you. It will help you out recover, and it doesn't mean you will not have bad times, but it's just and thank you for sharing those, because really I'm very optimistic, maybe naturally, about the future. So you mentioned about utopia or other things. I honestly believe that technologies can serve us, that can make our lives better. I believe with more caring leaders, the world is set up for getting some of the best times we ever have in human evolution. And sure, we need to take care of many things that we've over time taken advantage of, like the climate change, the access to water. I think these are two major challenges to us.
Huge.
But together and taking care of the small things, the plastics, all the things we do, we can make a difference. And Natalie, this is so inspiring of what you're just sharing. And I wanted to mention a few of the comments we have here. Cassandra Lennox saying, your story is a game changer. Thanks for sharing. Do we have a question from Marian M.P? Hi, Natalie. I have a question. Do you have a group? Do you have a group or community where you inspire each other's creativity, and how can we build such a space?
That's a great question. And currently, I do not. But it is something that we're working towards. And one of the first steps towards that is the Wonder Rigor Lab creativity course. So it's an online self-paced course. My team has worked incredibly hard, actually, leading up through this week to transfer to a new platform where we can really start to engage as a community. But I'm also very mindful of baby steps. I love this idea of prototyping so that I can build, test, learn. But thank you for that question. It lets me know that there's an interest in that. And I think the Wonder Rigor Lab ecosystem that we've built will be the start of that. So if you go to figure8thinking.com, and first of all, you can download a free sample chapter of the Creativity Leap that will opt you into getting our newsletter. And in that way, you'll stay up to date on our movement towards creating a community where we can support each other, inspire each other, and also I like to inspire and also share practical tips and techniques. So stay tuned for that. I hope that you'll join our newsletter.
Wonderful. What a great, you're already on kind of that journey to create this really platform. And I'm sure this will thrive and really, because there's so much really need and demand for this today. And I think it's a great moment to do that. Another question we have, Natalie, is from Stoyan Yankov, who you know. And Natalie, great podcast. How can we use creativity to build cultures of care and empathy? Do you have any examples of caring leaders who succeeded to do so?
You know, my examples of leaders who use, who really build cultures of care and empathy are probably our unsung heroes. They are teachers. I did not mention that there was a chapter in my career where I was a middle school English teacher, and probably that training was some of the best experience for all the work that I've gone on to do, because being a middle school English teacher, first of all, all chapters of our lives feel fragile in different ways, but you know, these are kind of like awkward cults, like trying to find their way, and they're not children anymore. They're not fully teenagers yet. They can smell blood a mile away. It taught me to have an incredible sense of humor about myself. It taught me how to be incredibly adaptive and flexible. But especially when I was working in the field of education, on the secondary level, primary, secondary level, teachers are leaders and teachers are improvisers. Every single day, they are needing to manage and inspire and cultivate a bit of a large herd of people and minds, to encourage them, to help to discipline them, to help them identify goals that they themselves don't even think they're capable of doing. And I don't think we spend enough time on really recognizing and acknowledging the value of teachers, especially not in American society. So I would have to go there. And I think we can all think about a teacher in our life who has invested incredible care and empathy. And because you use that word empathy, I just want to take an opportunity to share. I've done a lot of thinking about empathy, especially because when a lot of my work used to be in the field of design thinking. And in design thinking, we love to say empathy, empathy, empathy. We first have to start with the people in mind who are using our products and services. And yes, that's absolutely true. And tons of leaders of major corporations today are talking about empathy. And there's a step before empathy. Before you can empathize with anyone, you have to be curious about them. You have to wonder, why do they do it that way and not my way? Why do they sit over there and not over here? And that's another reason why in the model of creativity that I designed, there's something called the 3 I's, which are inquiry or curiosity, improvisation, and intuition. And I can't stress enough that leaders who care are also leaders who lead with questions, who are curious, who build inquiry into their leadership practice.
Wow, what a wonderful, really, thank you for sharing this, really. And I believe that the role of a teacher, it's so critical. Apart from the parents, there's 2 major figures in everyone's child's lives: the role of the teacher and the role of the parents. And I think, and I really wish the future of better, more caring world is when the role of the teacher becomes even more important than the prime minister, to be honest. That's how the status of the teacher is so important. You're right, they have to go through so much. They have to be creative. They have to deal with various different situations, inconsistency, opinions, the moodiness of teenagers, and they have to kind of stay late at night to really go through all that extra work that is needed. So I really admire the role of the teacher and really encourage that everyone who actually we know that you always remember the teacher that made an impact in positive impact in your life. Take a moment to recognize those teachers who really made a profound impact to our lives. So thank you for bringing this up and sharing, Natalie. Also, I wanted to encourage everyone to take a look at Natalie Wonder Rigor tip sheet and boost your creativity inspiration. We just put the link below. And Natalie, thank you so much for joining today and really sharing so many insights. You've addressed the future generation. You talked about really the future of work, and you talked about really how to create that successful culture for leaders, for the future leader that can make a tremendous success in their business. And you talked about the role of the teacher and the parent. So really, what a great variety of insights and really tips that you shared. Is there anything else, any final words that you wanted to share, Natalie?
No, I think we covered so much. I really enjoyed our conversation, Marian, and thank you for having me. I would just encourage your listeners to stay in touch, to visit figure8thinking.com. Definitely download the tip sheet, download the sample chapter of the book. And if that titillates your interest, then I think you would really love the Wonder Rigor Lab online creativity course. It's a self-paced DIY course that takes you through 4 milestones, 14 lessons, and I think you'll find it incredibly inspiring. And also you'll be equipped with a toolkit to help you amplify creativity in your life and in your work. So definitely check that out.
Wonderful. And what is the best way, if any of the listeners want to reach out to you or connect with you, how they should best connect with you?
Go to figure8thinking.com. That's FIGURE, the number 8, thinking.com. And there's a contact form where people can reach out to me. And again, that way you also will get on the newsletter mailing list, and you'll be able to keep up to date with all of the cool offerings and experiences that we're rolling out.
Thank you so much once again, Natalie, sending you a lot of positive energy and for sharing all these wonderful tips and really a lot of blessings. Thank you so much once again, and looking forward to stay in touch with you.
Me too. You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me.